frequency.
Good morning, Boulder County. It's Wednesday, July 22nd. I'm your host, Shay Castle. And this is The Frequency, a weekly local podcast covering the news, events, and voices shaping the Boulder Valley. This episode is brought to you by Central City Opera. Since 1932, Central City Opera has been one of Colorado's favorite arts traditions, bringing world-class talent to a 19th century opera house in historic Central City. This summer, CCO is celebrating the 70th anniversary of the world premiere of The Ballad of Baby Doe. The show tells the scandalous historical love story of silver baron Horace Tabor, who left his wife Augusta for Baby Doe. The performance rocked Denver society and today remains a staple of Colorado history. You can also catch The Marriage of Figaro, Masterclass, and CCO in concert this season, with the cast featuring talent from the Met, San Francisco Opera, and beyond. Tickets start at $32, and the festival runs through August 2nd. Visit centralcityopera.org to learn more. Coming up, we talk about potential wage cuts for bartenders, waitstaff, and other tipped workers in the city of Boulder, plus the systemic and sometimes intentional barriers to their participation in the process that might leave them with smaller paychecks. But first, the headlines. Workers at Hotel Boulderado staged a protest last week in front of the historic business. Employees are attempting to form a union they say is necessary to protect themselves from staffing cuts and increased workloads. The Boulderado is one of the city's oldest businesses, in operation for more than 117 years. Last year, Nashville-based AJR Capital Partners bought a majority share of the business from longtime local hospitality magnate Frank Day. Workers told the Daily Camera that hotel management has held a number of, quote, union-busting meetings, targeting the lowest-paid and Spanish-speaking employees. Hospitality union Unite Here has issued a travel warning for all Graduate Hotels by Hilton amid alleged unfair labor practices at multiple properties. Hotel Boulderado is set to become a Graduate property after its purchase by AJR, which owns the brand focused on college towns. Learn more and see updates from Unite Here at the links in our show notes. A lease for Colorado's second ICE detention facility is set to begin August 1st. As we previously reported on this show, a former 1,200-bed prison in Hudson is being reactivated as Bighorn Correctional Facility. GEO Group, which operates the Aurora Detention Center, last week announced it had been granted a 5-year, $528.7 million contract to operate the Immigrant Detention Center in Hudson. Activists have, for months, been showing up to Hudson's town meetings to urge local government officials to take action and stop the reopening of the facility.
This is a concentration camp that's going to have over 1,000 bodies in there. This is just going to be a lot of people going into a place where they're not going to get the care. They're not going to basically be treated like people. GEO Group is known for cruelty. These are things that we've brought up to town hall, and we keep bringing it up because they don't want to put it on the agenda. So every single time we go to town hall, they refuse to put it on the agenda, and they don't want to put it on the agenda. And we want them to listen to the public and give us a say. Their whole stance is just hands off. We can't do anything. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
That's Jennifer Montes. She appeared on our January 14th show to talk about her efforts to persuade Hudson's town board. Officials contend they do not have the authority to overrule the federal government. Read more from the Colorado Sun at the link in our show notes.
So compared to fast tracks in 2004, the costs weren't modeled out beforehand. We've already negotiated with the Class 1 railroads. Those operating costs are already locked in with BNSF Railway. and we moved straight to design. And we focused on utilizing existing freight Class 1 corridors and existing tracks that we are going to lease from the Class 1 railways for delivering service. There is no need for right-of-way acquisition. We do not need to use eminent domain or condemnation. And so we sort of flipped the Fast Tracks model on its head. Fast Tracks sold a great vision, and then they went to planning. We've done our planning, and now we're ready to go and deliver.
Listeners might remember Sal Pace. He joined the Frequency in May to talk about COCO, the new passenger train coming to the Front Range. A plan released Monday shows COCO will cost $200 million annually to operate and up to $5 billion to get to full build-out. Voters will this fall weigh a tax to fund more frequent trips between Fort Collins, Denver, and Pueblo. Regardless of whether or not that tax passes, 3 daily trips are planned along that route beginning in 2029. With funding already secured via the RTD Fast Tracks tax voters have been paying for since the early 2000s. If you want to learn more about COCO, there are 2 town halls upcoming in Longmont and Boulder on July 23rd and July 28th, respectively. Find details on those and a link to our Front Range train episode in the show notes. Speaking of transportation-related meetings, residents of many Boulder County towns find themselves besieged by airplane noise. Citizens in Superior, Lafayette, Longmont, and Boulder have all petitioned their local governments to do something about those planes, with often limited success. Now, Longmont is hosting a town hall with that very topic in mind. What the city can and cannot do about airport noise is scheduled for 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Monday, July 27th at Longmont Museum. Transportation attorney John Putnam will be on hand to explain the powers and limitations of local government when they try to take on the feds. The city of Boulder is considering modifying the tipped wage offset. Does that collection of words mean anything to you? Unless you're an avid watcher of city council, probably not. Let me translate it for you. Minimum wage in Boulder is $16.82 per hour, but food and beverage workers who earn tips get paid $13.80 per hour. The difference between the 2 wages is called the tip offset. Starting next year, Boulder is thinking about increasing the tip offset. Despite the word increase, it would actually mean less money for tipped workers. As a member of the working and not quite middle class, I consider wage cuts a big deal. So I'm devoting the entire week to this issue. Friday, we'll hear from a barista at a beloved Boulder breakfast spot and the manager of a dive bar to hear their objections to this plan and what they think the city should do instead to help local businesses like theirs. Today's episode is dedicated to explaining what City Council is doing and examining the ways in which workers are being shut out of the decision-making process. Let's start with why this is happening. Restaurant owners have lobbied elected officials for relief from the mounting cost of doing business. The calls for help increased after Boulder upped its minimum wage by 8% in 2025. That same year, Boulder's Judy Amabile sponsored a bill in the Colorado Senate to allow local governments to adjust the tipped wage. What exactly those changes might look like in Boulder are still to be determined. City Council took a preliminary vote on the issue June 25th and will hold a public hearing July 30th. But in an unusual move, they essentially left the ordinance as a fill-in-the-blank. They'll narrow down their options at the July 30th meeting. They could freeze the tipped wage in place, or they could allow it to increase as planned, just by less than originally scheduled. The other option is to leave it alone entirely. Without council action, tipped wages are set to rise to $15.15 per hour next year. Depending on what council does, workers could stand to lose thousands of dollars per year for full-time work, at a time when they say tips are also decreasing amid an economic downturn. Some change to the wage is almost certain.
There seems to be a close majority that's interested to change it. I don't know how much. Ryan Schuhard, I'm a member of the City Council for Boulder, and Shay, you asked me to talk about the tip credit and minimum wage.
Now that we've established what council is considering, let's talk process. There are several things that are keeping workers from participating. Some of them are rules already in place. and some are deliberate choices made by your elected officials. First up is active outreach. This is something the city does, or is supposed to do, whenever it makes policy that impacts certain demographics. While reluctant to criticize his council colleagues or city staff, Ryan did agree the engagement process was not sufficient. Was council briefed on what sort of outreach, if any, has been done to reach tipped workers? I would say this is a group that, by and large, tend to not be super involved or super present in city matters.
There was a little discussion about it in our the most recent meeting we had that set the direction that we would be bringing this to a hearing. I'll be honest, I didn't find it very compelling, the amount of information and timeline that we're giving folks that are impacted by this. This will happen now really before students come back from CU.
As Ryan alluded to, critics of the city have pointed out that nearly all action and discussion on this issue happened between semesters at CU Boulder. The city's online survey was open from April 21st to June 2nd. That's 1 week before finals through 1 month after graduation at CU Boulder. All 3 council votes on the tipped wage changes were scheduled during the summer. The majority of tipped workers in Boulder are older than college age, but CU students do make up a significant portion of the tipped workforce. As early as March, other council members were also petitioning for a process that included CU students, according to notes and audio shared from council planning meetings. Here's audio from a council planning meeting in May, in which Ryan attempted to shift the timeline. He was ultimately outvoted by his colleagues.
Is there a reason not to hold this out for 1 month to allow the students to be there?
There was a brief discussion. However, there was no consensus on the part of council about whether to wait for CU students to return or not.
I suppose my take is it's a pretty large group of people who are affected. So I would prefer that we make an accommodation for 4 weeks or, a month to let them speak for themselves.
The second point I want to draw your attention to is the actual time of the July 30th meeting. It starts at 6 p.m., which is the regular starting time for council meetings. It's meant to accommodate a professional 9 to 5 working schedule. But 6 p.m. is when a lot of tipped workers will be, working. That's an example of a systemic barrier to participation. Council didn't intentionally set the meeting during the dinner shift. They've always been held in the evenings. But council can and has moved meeting times before to accommodate other entities and events, like the Boulder Valley School District or county commissioners. True, I've never seen them move an evening meeting to a morning or afternoon, but they could if they wanted to. This time, they didn't.
I think from the standpoint of advocating to do it, if we're going to do it, let's do it sooner than later so that businesses and others know what we're doing, so that there's stability, there's certainty.
To be fair to the city, the initial vote was delayed to allow a longer time frame for community engagement, but it doesn't appear to have had much impact.
We've now done a number of canvassing events and gone out and talked to workers, and what we hear from them is frustration. Some of them have known about it, most don't.
That's Alejandra Beatty, president of the Boulder Area Labor Council. Alejandra and others have been organizing in recent weeks to try and convince council not to cut wages. Alejandra points to the inherent unfairness of tipping as a practice. Originally imported by English aristocrats and those that hoped to imitate them, tipping became widespread in the U.S. after the Civil War. Companies like railroads could avoid paying newly freed Black workers a wage. Even today, study after study shows tips are not spread equally. People of color and people with visible disabilities are routinely tipped less. That means changes to base wages will be felt more by those workers.
It continues to be a racist system, so we shouldn't be doing anything that exasperates that and adds to it. And an additional change in the tipped credit, and what I call reducing the sub-minimum wage, is doing just that. Exasperating a system that really we should actually all vote to not do that. And I would encourage restaurants to consider pooled tips and other more equitable means to make those adjustments.
Alejandra sees a troubling pattern when it comes to government action on wages. Boulder County last year rolled back its planned minimum wage increases at the behest of business owners and farmers. Farm workers in Colorado will soon have to work 56 hours per week before qualifying for overtime. Thanks to legislation passed this session, those rules go into effect January 1st, the same time any changes to Boulder's tipped wage would be implemented. The timing is ironic, Alejandra says, given Sundance's debut in Boulder mere weeks later. She worries it could boil over into strikes or walkouts.
So this is boiling into a labor dispute. Like, we should not be paying workers less pay when we're talking about an influx into this town of lots and lots of people. To me, it still feels like it's the same conversations that we had during minimum wage of, if we want to build a better economy for everybody, are we so sure that we're doing this right? It feels like there's a gap somewhere. Why don't we have a plan that starts to address some of what's going on for these restaurants? And sometimes I feel like, well, that's because the plan might include taxing some of our own rich people. And I think there's a bunch of them that don't want to see that happen. And I think that's what's going on behind the scenes.
Ryan, too, opposes changes to the tipped minimum wage, preferring to focus on solutions to help businesses without punishing workers. The son of convenience store owners, he said it's been a journey to arrive at his current position.
We have such great affordability challenges. It's very hard to live in town and be a wage worker here. It's hurting our economy. It's hurting the services that we have. It's undermining our ability to run the town effectively, that we don't make it affordable enough for people who work here to be able to live here. So I have changed on this and come to find that it's just so much more fundamental that we are helping workers, doing the most we can to help workers to try to be able to afford to live here and have a life here. I think our best chance is to try to rise tides by doing things that are good for business and not taking from the workers.
There are other barriers to participation we didn't get to cover, like how do you even speak at the July 30th meeting, and let council know what you think they should do with wages. It's not easy to navigate if you're not used to it. To help you out, we'll drop step-by-step directions in our show notes. Thanks to Ryan and Alejandra for speaking with me. Tune in Friday when we hear from the biggest voices missing from this conversation, the workers themselves. We're ending today's show with a quote from Ben Sui of Holy Fool. Holy Fool is the sponsor of Lucifer's Last Rodeo, the DIY music festival happening in Denver this week, July 23rd to 26th. Find tickets and info at luciferfest.org and listen to my full interview with Ben on the June 19th episode of The Frequency. Before you go, here's one more thing.
I am not interested in the kind of music that's like music to shout to, you know what I mean? Like music that just sort of exists to perpetuate the world that as we know it and as we have it. This is maybe a little bit harsh, but it's like if you watch the Grammys, a lot of the music that like sort of gets reinforced in that major sort of industry is just primarily it's propping up what we already know or what we used to believe. There's not a real heart to it. But when you go to like the unknown songwriter that like is way too weird and way too angular for like the mainstream stuff, it's just like, oh, there's something really vibrant going on there. So yeah, more and more just as I witness and am in friendships and community with songwriters you've never heard of and probably likely will never hear of, because it normalizes that value of like, the arts are supposed to be participated in. It's not for these sacred anointed people over here. It's just like it's for all of us, for normal folks, right?